So hopefully you are coming to this part two of this two-part video series on the wonder and the joy of toned coins. If you haven't seen part one of the series, I encourage you to go back and take a look at that one first. It'll make a lot more sense. Plus, we covered a lot of really interesting pieces, and what fun is it to make videos if you can't look at some beautiful coins once in a while? If you are new to the channel, my name is Dub C. I want to thank you for being with me here today. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'd like to encourage you to go ahead and click on the subscription button, become part of this community. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe. It just is a way of showing support for the channel, and I'd really appreciate it if you are one of my returning subscribers. Thank you guys, as always, for being with me here. We usually begin our videos with a simple disclaimer. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer you any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years. We started the last video in this series, again, this is part two, with the discussion of what toning is. We talked a little bit about artificial toning as opposed to natural toning, AT versus NT. And we talked about some of the other attributes of toning. We talked a little bit about toning on copper, toning on gold. We touched really briefly on tab toning, crescent toning, bullseye toning, and rim toning. In this video, we're going to talk about a few other types of toning, and then I'm going to give you some examples of some advice, some thoughts about toning in general, some suggestions if this is something you want to pursue. If you have any specific questions about this at the end of this video, I will ask you to kind of leave your comments down below. And as always, I try to encourage everybody to go ahead and read through the comments. There's always valuable information that can be learned from within the community, and especially if you are new to either precious metals or rare coins, the amount of information that you can learn quickly by reading other people's comments and watching videos like this is the type of information that took me decades to learn. So I want to thank you for being with me here, and hopefully this part two will be as illuminating as part one was. So we picked off by looking at this really, left off with this really beautiful 1901 Pan American metal. And I mentioned this this coin in particular, and I said that this was kind of a form of rim toning. If you have seen the first video and you remembered what I was talking about early on, I said that I find personally that toning that really complements the design of a coin is some of my favorite toning, and I think that this is a fantastic example of this. Again, I'm sorry for the glare. The images that you see on the surface of this coin remind me of the fall, the season of the fall. You've got oak leaves all throughout the image here, like on the buffalo, around the buffalo's neck here. We'll zoom in just a little bit so you can see it. And that kind of brings the idea of fall to me. When I'm thinking of fall, when I'm thinking of autumnal colors, I think of beautiful kind of, the leaves changing colors, the oranges, the reds. And this toning matches that kind of theme to me. So this is an example of, it's completely subjective, how you would kind of feel about this toning, but there's something that just kind of works with this tone color and the subject matter that we're looking at here. I think that's a fantastic example. I just wanted to highlight that a little bit before we move on to the other styles of toning that we're going to talk about in part two of this video series. The next type of toning that is really, really seen a lot in the Morgan Dollar series, especially. Oh, you can find it in other series as well, but I think it really takes off in the Morgan series, is what we call textile toning. It's my understanding that the big canvas sacks that the mint shipped and, most importantly, stored Morgan dollars in vaults, in banks, and in those really interesting GSA silver dollars that the mint offered to the public years and years after these Morgan dollars were released. A lot of those coins came into contact with these canvas bags, and that is likely one of the environmental factors that resulted in Morgan dollars sometimes having brilliant, brilliant colored textile toning. It picks up, the coins pick up a little bit of that surface, the weave of the cotton bag, and the cotton bags themselves, probably treated with chemicals, imparted some kind of just ridiculously brilliant toning to some very special Morgan dollars. These became Very popular in the early 2000s. There was one collector who had gone through coin shows all over the country and had really assembled the most amazing collection of Tone Morgan dollars that you're ever going to see. And he was looking for these at a time when nobody else was really paying much attention to them. And some people probably thought that they were damaged coins, but he recognized just how amazing these pieces were, and he assembled an incredible collection. And you're looking at some examples of just how spectacular some of these Morgan dollars can look. We say throughout this whole video, I say that, this is really something that's in the eye of the beholder, but some of these pieces just knock your socks off when you see them in person, and they are really, really beautiful. Very cool. So examples of textile toning, and that goes hand in hand with rainbow toning. Now, rainbow is a little bit difficult to distinguish also, and you can have rainbow that comes in bullseye toning also, and we saw a little bit of what I would kind of consider to be rainbow toning in this really wickedly toned piece dollar round, piece round. I guess I shouldn't even say dollar because it certainly isn't a dollar, but you get the idea of the rainbow there, right? That tone color, even more vivid, I think, on the reverse. You definitely have a little bit of rainbow. I wouldn't be opposed to calling this rainbow. If you are a collector of the piece dollar series, you know that piece dollars, unlike Morgan dollars, are almost impossible to find attractively toned. Toned piece dollars are very rare. Attractively toned piece dollars are incredibly rare. We've seen all sorts of kind of mottled tones. Some piece dollars pick up kind of a greenish yellow tone. And it seems like people who are fans of piece dollars try as hard as they can to kind of make those pieces look like they are attractive. But they're really, really not to me. I do have an example of an incredibly scarce rainbow toned piece dollar, and that's what you're looking at here. Now, unlike some Morgan dollars, and we saw those images earlier, you can definitely see how vivid the toning can be on Morgans. It really isn't that often that you find a piece dollar with toning, but if you want an example of rainbow tone, you're looking at it here. I know, again, I apologize for the glare. You sometimes need really bright light in order to see some of these, and we'll definitely see that with an example later. This toning here is incredibly rare to find on a piece dollar. That is traditional rainbow toning, and it just does not happen on piece dollars very often. There's a little bit around the outside rim. It goes all the way around the bottom, and on the back there's just a little bit here and there. There's little tiny spots of it like down there, but it's really the most prevalent there on the top of the obverse, and that is just something that you never, ever see on a piece dollar. Now, the question is, would this dollar slab, would it holder at PCGS, NGC, or CAC? And that's a really, really good question. But I can tell you that I've had this dollar in my collection for many years, at least 10 years, probably more like 20. And in that period of time, I've had ample opportunity to crack this piece out and to send it to NGC especially. And I've never done that. That should tell you a little bit about how legitimate, for lack of a better word, that I think that toning is. I think it's 100% legitimate in an annex slab, but I'm not so sure that PCGS, NGC, or CAC would agree with it. And because of that, I am not willing to take the risk. This is a vintage annex holder anyway, and I'm reluctant to break into one of those. But because toning on piece dollars like that is so ridiculously scarce, I mean, it's like literally 1 in 10,000 that you'll find that has anything that resembles rainbow or even attractive toning, in my opinion, that I'm just not willing to take the gamble. I don't want to break it out of that and find out that for some reason NGC, PCGS, or CAC view this as some kind of a surface contamination rather than legitimate toning. For now, it's going to stay right where it is. So there's an example of rainbow toning. It's a little bit more scarce. It's a little bit more difficult to find. Interesting, rainbow toning is something that does occur on nickels. So there's something to look forward, especially if you like those types of coins in that series. So a little bit of rainbow toning. The next one is something that I have called these pieces, and other folks have different names for these, but I like to refer to this as complete or near complete toning. This is when you have one color that covers the entire surface of a coin, or even both the obverse and the reverse of a coin. And we've got some really cool examples here. This is a Canadian silver maple, and this is a 1988, and it's in its original vinyl holder. And this coin is red, and you can see that there. It's got shades of purple too, but front and back, it is largely this color. Now, I bought this piece having been in a dealer's collection for years and years. This is something that they sold me essentially for melt. And I liked it because I had never seen a maple that had just been toned red like this. Again, you have to ask, is it a product of the environment? Did this receive some kind of off-gassing either before my dealer picked it up or even after my dealer picked it up? Unintentional. I don't believe that this piece was intentionally toned orange like this or red like this. It is certainly unusual, but I may at some point break into this and send it off to NGC or PCGS because I think it is so unusual that for me, based on the value of this piece, how little I paid for it in the first place, I think that this would definitely benefit from being in a legit slab rather than just raw like this. Even if it's in the original vinyl pouch, there is every possibility that there are small holes all over this that allowed some kind of off-gassing to occur. That is an example of what I would consider to be complete or near complete toning. I've got another example here. You're probably familiar with Liberty Dollars. This is an example of what these typically look like. This is a heavily, heavily toned Liberty Dollar, obverse and reverse. This one's got rainbow toning as well. You can see it in the upper quadrant here of the coin, right through there. Again, sorry about the flash from the lights above, but you can definitely make out some rainbow tone. That is a little unusual on this piece. But because this piece is so toned, especially compared to a non-toned piece, I would call this complete or near complete toning. It is unusual and pretty exceptional. It's got a little bit of rim toning around the outside, but you can see just how unusually bright and colorful that toning is. One of my favorite examples of a not an official issue, somewhat more akin to a silver round. Complete or near complete toning. Now, I talked in the beginning of volume 1 of the series about how sometimes toning becomes very dark. Sometimes it is a dark gray, sometimes it's almost a black color, sometimes it is a mottled tone. And I've got an example of what we would probably consider to be nearing terminal in terms of toning, and that's this 1882 Morgan dollar. Now, this piece, when you see it in hand, has flashes of tone all around the rim. You can see some color there, and there's color in other aspect or other parts of this coin as well. But generally speaking, there's some color here up at the top. Generally speaking, when you see this piece in hand, it is quite dark. This is, some people try to call these black beauties or something like that. This is not an unusual type of tone for a Morgan dollar, but this piece is incredibly dark, and I think this is probably darker than most collectors would really want a Morgan dollar to be, especially when you're looking at an MS64. So again, in the eye of the beholder, is it toned? Is it attractive toned? It's definitely toned. Is it attractive still? This is crossing that border, I think, between terminal and non-terminal toning. The benefit of this piece being in this holder is that this too is an annex holder, just like the piece dollar that we looked at briefly before. But this is one of the earliest holders that Annex ever released, and we know that because of this alphanumeric code here, rather than just the plain numeric code that you see here on the piece dollar. So this is a very early Annex slab. It is not an especially valuable Morgan dollar. It's an MS64. I've had this one for probably 2 decades, maybe even a little bit longer than that. So I've got no intention of breaking it out. I like the holder more than anything. And it's kind of a shame because you can see that this piece really did have some beautiful tone, and it's got beautiful cartwheel luster. It's just that the overall tone of this coin is so dark that I think many people would consider it too dark. And it's at that point that a coin goes from having extra value from attractively toned to maybe even having lesser value because the tone is not as attractive. Again, eye of the beholder, but there's a fantastic example of what you look at sometimes. So that was what we would call complete or near complete toning. The next one I like to call confetti toning. And we don't see it quite as often, and this can be incredibly difficult for a camera, especially a video camera, to pick up. But this is a Mexican 1 peso coin. You see here, this is a 1943. It is definitely an uncirculated coin, and it's got beautiful cartwheel luster as well. You'll note that I keep on drawing attention to the fact that these pieces are uncirculated. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But when you see this piece in hand, it has what I call confetti toning because it's got spotty, blotchy toning. But the tone is fantastic. You can see the golds, the blues, the reds, the magentas. There are greens, there's orange, every color of the rainbow. But rather than being in those really particular bands across the surface of the coin, in the case of this one, they're just little confetti colored pieces all over the surface of the coin. Again, unfortunately, it doesn't pick up quite as well on camera. This is a really neat piece when you see it in hand and very unusual. I have no doubt that this is authentically toned. It's something that you don't see very often, and I think it's a really exciting type of tone. This one has a little bit of darkness that hides a little bit of that rainbow. It's almost an opalescent color, but when you see so many different colors of the rainbow spread all throughout the surface of the coin, it reminds me of a piñata being hit, and I think it's entirely appropriate for something that we call confetti toning in a Mexican coin. I think it's a really neat thing. And then finally, I've got an example of crazy or wild toning. There are a whole lot of terms that are used to describe this type of toning, but it really kind of, once again, depends on the eye of the beholder. And this one tells an interesting story as well. And that's this 1964 Kennedy half dollar. Now, I actually picked this one up probably about 10 years ago from a local dealer who sold it to me for melt at the time. I picked it out of I want to say 3 or 4 different rolls of 1964 Kennedys, and I was just flipping through them, and I was talking with him, not having much to say. We were just shooting the breeze, and I came across this piece, and I think he said that he had seen it also, had absolutely positively sure that this piece was artificially toned. And this is the exact type of coin that somebody who was experimenting with the different techniques of toning a coin would go for, because these are incredibly common pieces. There is nothing special at all about the 1964 Kennedy half dollar, especially the Denver. This series, we made hundreds of millions. I want to say that we made north of 300 million silver half dollars in 1964. But you can see here, once again, my glare is a little bit bad. You've got some rainbow toning right here. Do you see that orange goes into green and a little bit of red down here? You've got a little bit of that right here. You can see it. And then back behind his head, there's red and green and yellow as well. This isn't the most attractive toning that I've ever seen, but it's really vibrant. When you see this piece in hand, it's exciting. But what makes this piece wildly toned? Are you ready for it? This is going to knock your socks off. Look at the toning on the reverse. I've never seen such vivid toning on a 1964 Kennedy half dollar in my 30 or 40 years of doing this. Again, the light kind of makes it hard to see, but this is ridiculous. This is magenta and fuchsia and green and blue and red. Look at this band of blue up at the top here. Again, I said at the beginning of this video series that blue is an unusual color to see, especially vibrant blue. This is ridiculous. The toning on this is insane. One of my favorite pieces of coins that I've ever come across. And I paid melt for this, and I was even somewhat convinced that this was artificially toned, but something about the colors blending into each other made me at least decide to take the risk and send this to NGC with a bunch of other stuff. And I was blown away when it came back authentic, naturally toned MS65. I call this piece a graffiti coin, a spray painted coin. That's what it looks like to me, right? That almost looks like somebody just got a hold of the seal of the President of the United States and just spray painted it, just went nuts with those colors. It is ridiculous, and it's so much more vibrant in hand than what the camera is picking up. You have to see this one in person to believe it. One of the coolest coins I've ever seen when it comes to toning. So that's how we're going to end the different examples of the different styles of toning on coins. Now, I do have some advice and some thoughts. And as always, if you like toned coins, even if it's something that was made with a blowtorch last week, there's nothing wrong with that. You have every right to collect pieces that appeal to you in the same way that you have the right to collect coins that are cleaned, badly cleaned and polished, or if you want to polish them, nobody's going to stop you from doing that. All I can do is remind you that the coin market in general frowns on artificially toned coins. And people that are in this community that have been here for a long time can tell almost instantly when something has been artificially toned. There are all sorts of tells that we can use, whatever the chemical has been used, whatever the heat treatment process has been used. The third-party graders will often not accept a coin that has ridiculous toning on it, and that's what was so shocking about this Kennedy, is that they did. So what they say tends to go when it comes to these pieces, and we'll touch on that again later. So generally, my thoughts on toned coins, it's been my experience that for people who want uncirculated, or rather toned coins, you should probably stick with uncirculated. Anything that's graded from 60 to 70 is really the wheelhouse of when toning matters. You can find pieces that are less than uncirculated that have beautiful toning to them, but at a certain point it really becomes almost environmental rather than just this beautiful toning. This is just something that happens to silver over time. And finding a piece that is VF or XF with a little bit of color to it doesn't have anywhere near the same impact in the coin collecting community as finding a piece that's an MS65 with a little bit of tone for it. Again, if this is interesting to you, if it didn't cost you very much, if this is something that you really like, I'm not saying don't buy it, don't collect it. I'm just saying that when it comes to the value of pieces for the broader coin community, it's the uncirculated pieces that have tone that are really going to be in the highest range of demand. What else can we say? There is a type of coin that we have taken to calling in the collecting community in the last decade or so, circ cam, that means circulated cameo. And those coins can be really attractive. You're looking at a couple of examples of a circulated cameo coin here. This provides kind of a black and white contrast in almost a cameo way. These are circulated pieces, but the way the oxidation has kind of attached itself to this coin highlights the areas that haven't been worn down, while really offering some brilliant contrast with the areas that have been, or vice versa. It really kind of depends on the coin. I don't think that the market really appreciates these quite as much as I do, and it really kind of depends on the coin and the eye of the beholder, but sometimes these circ cam or circulated cameo pieces can be really neat, so keep your eyes out for those, especially if there's not a premium on something like that. That's a great way to start a collection of interesting pieces that are probably at least a little bit undervalued right now. The importance of slabbed coins. When it comes to toning on coins, the idea that they're subjective. If you like it, that's perfectly fine. But the market in general does not like wildly toned coins unless they are in a reputable third-party grader's holder. Again, the example of the 64 Kennedy here. This is the kind of thing that would have been practice for anybody who wants to try to artificially tone a coin. So, the idea that it's in a holder from a reputable third-party grader, like I said before, this one is in a holder, but it's maybe not quite seen as quite as good and solid a grading company as NGC, PCGS, and CIC. So the importance of having these pieces in a third-party grader, a reputable third-party grader, is really, really important. I talked in the first video about the concept of making a coin. This is a fantastic example of making a coin. I bought this piece raw, I sent it to NGC, they accepted it as being naturally toned and sent it back as a 65. That's a phenomenal grade for something like this, and I am, again, super thrilled to have that. But there is a lot of risk if you're going to try to make a toned coin, unless you really know what you're looking for. Artificial toning can fool even the most sophisticated collectors, and if you submit something, if you buy something, submit it to a third-party grader expecting it to come back naturally toned, there is a very good chance that it will come back artificially toned. So this can be a serious gamble. The answer to that is to look for pieces that are already slabbed. And there have been some examples of people trying to tone coins within a slab. There's a technique that can be used that I'm not going to talk too much about because I don't want to give you hoodlums any ideas. But This is why it's important to look for third-party graders' websites, and when they have a piece that has been graded and you can look up and see the images, if you can find the image that actually shows the tone on it already there, then you're home free, right? You've got this. If you buy it already slabbed, then you know that that toning is natural toning, assuming the piece doesn't come back as artificially toned. And that can save you a lot of heartache most of the time, at least probably 75% of the time. If you're buying a really interesting looking toned coin and then send it in, you're going to be disappointed. They're going to send it back in a body bag, or they're going to tell you that it's been artificially toned. It happens all the time. So use caution. That's the best way to protect your dollars, especially if you're buying these pieces raw and they are selling for a premium. If you're paying $150, $200 for a common Morgan dollar because it's got pretty tone, be careful about that unless it's already in a reputable third-party grader slab. That's the best piece of advice I can give you if you like toned coins and you have any interest in making sure that your pieces are naturally toned. And we talked about that a little bit before, the idea that a third-party grader is the final arbiter of what is and what isn't natural toning. And some people will disagree with them 100%. But ultimately, when it comes to toning, just as when it comes to grade, if a coin makes it into a reputable third-party grader's holder, the general market will see that piece as being valid, right? So even if this piece has been artificially toned through some process, if it makes it through the third-party grader and they accept it, then their word is essentially gospel. That's the way it works. The same way with a coin that's been cleaned, the same way that a coin has a certain condition to it. If the third-party grader, a reputable third-party grader, likes the piece and it makes it into their slab in a straight grade, like this one, then this piece is a natural toned coin, no matter what anybody else has to say about it. And the market seems to follow that. You may have some people who dissent a little bit, but the general market will be that this piece is valid if it's been put into a reputable third-party grader's holder. So that's the best advice I can possibly give you. If they accept it, it's good. And if you're buying a piece in the aftermarket that's already been accepted by one of these third-party graders, it's good. If you're buying something that's raw on the market, be very careful, because there's a whole bunch of people who use a whole bunch of techniques to artificially tone coins. And if you pay a premium, you're going to lose out in the end, probably, with that coin. One of the ways to protect yourself also is by buying toned pieces in a vintage holder. I have in my collection a gorgeous, very scarce, large metal that I purchased many years ago that had just this ridiculous rainbow toning in the form of tab toning also. Remember I said that sometimes you can combine these different styles of toning? This piece was knock your socks off. It is phenomenal. This is a piece that came from an old collection going back at least 120, 130 years ago. And when I first had the opportunity to buy this, it had just been graded by one of the third-party graders. And my opinion about this was, that's fantastic. Again, the third-party grader had agreed that this was a naturally toned piece. It made it into their holder. It was a phenomenally scarce piece. Knock your socks off tone. But over the course of about 5 years, that tone faded. Now, it's still very attractive, but it is nowhere near as beautiful as it had been when it was first put into that holder. And that's just the way that toning works sometimes. This coin had probably been in a very old holder for most of its life. And once it was out of that environment, remember we talked about environment not just being the gases that come into contact with the coin, but also the holders sometimes. This holder had solidified and stabilized this coin for 100 years with this beautiful rainbow tab toning on it. And once it was removed from that and put into a third-party grader's holder, it no longer had that environment that was giving it this tone, and the tone faded probably 50, 60%, maybe even more than that. So while this piece had been really, truly exceptional, and it is still exceptional, it's still scarce, and the toning is very attractive, if you could compare the before and the after, you would be as heartbroken as I am about this piece. So if you want to pursue these pieces, look for pieces that are in older holders. That is an evidence that the color of this piece has stabilized. And I've got some examples I'll show you in my later, more serious coin collection, but we talked in this last video about these OGH holders from PCGS. I want to say that this coin probably dates in this slab going back somewhere around 25, maybe even 30 years. It was the early 1990s. So the fact that this coin has been stable in this holder for probably that period of time, and this the color of this coin, the tone of this coin, is probably not going to fade. If anything, maybe it'll get a little bit darker and a little bit richer. Look for those pieces that are in the older slabs that look like they are stable, and that is a good indication that that coin will continue to be stable for a long period of time. And then finally, if you're going to pursue pieces like this, especially if you're going to find more interesting and rare and scarce pieces, valuable pieces, protect them. That's one of the best pieces of advice that I could give you, especially if you've got these in older holders. There are a whole bunch of techniques that you can use when you want to store coins in slabs, and we're talking primarily about those uncirculated coins that are already in slabs, right? I already told you about that. This is a typical slab holder, and you can see that the slabs all line up perfectly inside of this. This is fine. This is a fine way to store your slabbed pieces. There's nothing wrong with this. But if you've got really exceptional pieces that you really want to protect those really, really fragile tone surfaces, the best advice that I can give you is something like the Intercept Shield box. This is a double protection to protect your pieces, and I'll just kind of show you how it works here. I'm not going to dig too deep into this because I don't want to show you guys any of these pieces yet, but this is an example of an older holder inside the Intercept Shield box, and the Intercept Shield box comes with these inner cases also. And you can see the slabs fit right into these cases. These are impregnated with certain chemicals that stop the process of toning. So you're trying to, as hard as you can, to arrest the toning in the condition that you like the best. These are some of the best way to protect those incredibly valuable and very delicate surfaces of the coin. So this is an older holder, and it's inside the Intercept Shield inner box, and it's inside the Intercept Shield outer box. That's how I store my best coins. But I've taken it one step further, and I use these guardhouse bags. This is a slab holder, and that's that thin plastic sheet that you see there. And it's really nice. These are resealable. You just simply take the coin out of it, and you can see it up close and personal. And then when you want to, watch me not be able to do this on screen, you simply slip the coin back in it, and it reseals with this sticky here. And then you've got at least another layer of protection for the slab. It keeps scratches off the slab, and as you get older in slabs, you want to protect these original slabs as much as you can because there is value in that as well. And then it also does a nice job of protecting these pieces when you're putting them inside these Intercept Shield boxes. So you're combining guardhouse technology with Intercept Shield boxes, and it's really about the best protection that I know of to really protect the quality of your coins and those really delicate toned surfaces. That makes a really nice combination there. Finally, I told you I'd give you one hint that people have died for. All right, maybe they haven't died for it, but this is a really valuable way to check on these pieces. I mentioned earlier that it's a good idea to check on the third-party graders' websites, especially websites like PCGS, who often, not always, but often has really beautiful pictures of the coins that they have graded. If you're buying a piece at auction, especially at auction, I have found that a lot of the auctioneers are not the best at photographing tone, and photographing tone is really tricky to do sometimes. You have to really know how to do it in order to really make those colors pop. So my best advice, and the advice that people have killed for, if you like a piece that you suspect is toned and it is being sold, especially on an online auction, look at the certification number, go to that third-party grader's website, look up the coin, and see if it is toned on their pictures. PCGS in particular is really good at photographing tone. So if you find a coin that is for sale through an online auction and it looks like it may have tone, but it doesn't really show up in the auction listings, go to the third-party grader, look up the coin, and if it is toned on their page, on their website, then there's a good indication that that coin is really beautifully toned also through the auction company, and other folks who don't know about this little trick may overlook this coin, not thinking that it's as beautifully toned as you just found out it is. and you can place your bid accordingly. I have picked up some phenomenally toned coins using this technique. You have to kind of know what you're looking for. You have to kind of gauge that, yeah, there may be something going on here that hasn't been picked up by the in-house photographers at these auction sites. And if you can go to PCGS or NGC and look up these pieces and find out that they do in fact have beautiful tone, you're off to the races. Make that bid, make it strong, and you may pick up some fantastic coins. So there we are. You've had everything that I could possibly give you when it comes to toned coins. As I said at the end of the last video, if you've got questions about any of these pieces, by all means leave a question down below. I am fond of saying if you've got a question, there's a good chance that somebody else has a question also. Let's see if we can answer it for everybody. If you've got a suggestion for new videos or even video series that you'd like to see me make, like again, shout out to Kevin Russell 5597 for re-suggesting this one. I'd leave that comment down below also. I'll see if I've got the knowledge and the information and the examples so we can take a look at those. And I'll give you a big shout out if we make a video based on your suggestion. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, here's your opportunity. Go ahead and click on that subscription button. Once again, doesn't cost anything. I'd love to have you be part of this community. Always be learning, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as we go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.